welcome guys. So today let's dive in straight and we'll talk about how to make notes, right? So let's not waste any time. First thing to start with, it's very important to understand is why do we need to make notes first of all, right? Why can't we just read books and it is enough? Reasons are many. The most important reasons is that it is very easy to revise if you have your own notes because they are very short, they are very crisp. Then you remember most of the things while you make your notes. As in, when you are making your notes, you have to read the same things 2 3 times at least, so you tend to remember those things for a longer period of time when you make your own notes rather than you just reading it and trying to remember it. So if you make your own notes, because writing something down makes you remember it for a longer period of time basically. So then that is there. Apart from that, notes will also help you in developing your answer writing skills. As in, when you make your notes, more or less the way your notes look, more or less your answers will also look the same way. So if you, while you make your notes, develop certain habits, those same habits will also help you in your answer writing. Also, when you write notes, you will not just be copying from book. You'll be, because you will need to shorten those notes, you will be writing them in your own words, so it will also help improve your writing skills. It's a great practice. Then it is very important to develop certain habits such as using of maps, flowcharts, diagrams in your answer writings while you make your own notes, because this same habit will be useful for you when you use it in your answer writing in your actual exam. Then lastly, there are many toppers notes and whatnot available on the internet and even in the market, which aspirants these days purchase rather than making their own notes. It is advisable that you don't do that. Reason is that uh, everyone has their own way of making notes, everyone has their own way of making things easier for themselves. So when you use these topper notes, you are basically using their strategy and try their strategy to fit your own strategy, which more often than not will not work. And then you will feel ki I have all the notes, I have everything, and still I am not able to remember this, or so that you need to avoid that, right? So better you make your own notes. Now we'll come to components of notes. What are the good components? What are the components of good notes? Sorry. So for that, the most important component would be that they should be precise. What is precise? It means they should be to the point. You should not beat around the bush. You should not write 4 lines and then come to the point. No, you can do that in your answers, in your essays, maybe if you run out of points, but not in your notes. Make them very, very precise. Number two, they should be there's the use of keywords, right? When you write your notes, try to write as many keywords as possible rather than writing entire sentences and paragraphs. Those keywords will also be useful when you write your mains answers, because examiner is looking for those keywords only in your answers and not the entire thing. If you write the keyword, examiner will assume that okay, you must have written about that point. Number three, maps. Especially in geography, wherever it is possible, don't try to fit in a map everywhere, but wherever it is possible, a map will always fetch you more marks. A schematic representation of things is more appealing, it's more easier, and it's saves time also for an examiner. For example, if you are asked about India's mineral deposits and you write it down, it will take 1 or 2 pages, while on a map it is visible on a single map, all the things, if properly marked, right? It saves a lot of time. Fourth is concise. What do we mean when we say speak of concise? We means that use of least amount of words or sentences for most maximum amount of knowledge or maximum amounts of points. So when you talk about concise, we mean that you will use least amount of words, least amounts of sentences, but you will convey as much as possible. Then use of flowcharts and diagrams. Again, just like maps, use of flowcharts and diagrams will get you more marks. You can speak a lot in less number of amount of space. It's much easier to understand, looks cleaner. So again, that's why. Then the sixth and the most important part these days is that they should be updated. I will tell you how to update your notes with current affairs in the process of notes making itself, so don't worry about it. So by updated we mean that your notes are up to date, as in they include current affairs also. I will give you one example by showing you how and why maps are important, right? So this is a map which I have myself used, and I have asked my mother to send this photo from my geography notes so that I can use it in this video. This map talks about, you know, monsoon. See, monsoon is a very unique feature of this Indian subcontinent. That the kind of weather, the climate this monsoon is, it's a very unique feature of Indian subcontinent. But now, and by virtue of being very unique to Indian subcontinent, it becomes very important, right? So this map was used by me to make myself understand the entire phenomena of Indian monsoon. And this map, which shows various branches of Indian monsoon, and various other rainfall patterns also over the Indian subcontinent, and various other kinds of short-term rainfalls which happen throughout the year. This map was enough for me to revise the entire, Indian climate. I don't need to read anything. I just only had to look at this map, right? Because when you use a map, it is much easier to understand concepts. This is an practice of maps again and again, like 4 or 5 times. You will be able to use this map in your answer, which will give you much more marks, right? So this is just one example why maps are important. Now I will show you how to make notes myself. I will also ask, if you want, you can try to make notes with me if you wish. The only things that you need are India's Struggle for Independence by Vipin Chandra, the book, one A4 sheet, and a pencil and a pen. A pencil because we will first underline important points in the book, and you will need a pencil for that. I will ask you not to use a pen while you underline, because you might feel something, you underlined extra or some, so you might like to erase it. Some people have that habit, and I also personally like to keep my books cleaner, so that's why I will suggest you to use a pencil and a pen, obviously, to make notes, right? So let's dive in. Guys, now we will look at how to make notes, and I will show you by making notes from a couple of chapters of this book, India's Struggle for Independence by Bipin Chandra. I guess most of the aspirants who study modern Indian history, they prefer this book, so it will be a good example, because I hope most of you will be anyways reading it, right? So I will make notes from first 3 chapters of this book. This is the book which I have used in my preparation, so you can already see most of the things are marked and everything is there, right? So first 3 chapters would be the first major challenge, civil rebellions and tribal uprisings, and peasant movements and uprisings after 1857. So these first 3 chapters, once you have read this book in its entirety, you will realize that the first 3 chapters consist and talk about the period which we call pre-Congress period in India's freedom struggle, right? So in these 3 chapters, the first chapter talks about the first major challenge, the revolt of 1857. Now, how to approach this is the first chapter of this book. How do you go about it, right? As in, how do you start making notes from this book, or for that matter from any book? The first thing that you have to do is you have to give it a very fast first reading, in which the only purpose of for you is to have a slight hold and get an idea what the chapters in the book is about, what it talks about. The first reading is not about completely understanding, it's only about getting an idea. So I will just read the first reading. It was the morning of 11th May 1857. The city of Delhi had not yet woken up. So you just go ahead reading it very fast, or whatever pace you decide to follow. Then in this first reading itself, try and underline whatever you feel is very, very important. Like for the first paragraph that I have read, I come to this line: he was however persuaded, if not coerced, to give in, and was proclaimed Shahnshah-e-Hindustan. See, now this term in particular interests me, because this is something which looks different, which looks important, right? Because there might be a question: who was proclaimed as Shahnshah-e-Hindustan during the revolt of 1857? So I have underlined it, right? So, and then I will move forward. I will read this chapter. I will continue reading this chapter, the revolt at Meerut. This is my first reading, so don't worry about it. Even if you don't underline anything, even if you don't underline, and you underline a lot of things, it does not matter, because you are not going to make notes after first reading. You are going to make notes after your second reading. It does not matter. But I have, for example, underlined. See, North India as well as Central and Western India, the rebellion almost all over. South India remained quiet and Punjab and Bengal were only marginally affected. I have underlined that. Then I come to the next page. I read, I continue reading, and this way, I I have underlined some things which I found were important. See, in this first reading, whatever you have underlined, it's not necessary that it will be very important, or it's not necessary that it will go in your notes, because you have no idea right now what is important, what is not. Right? This is the first reading of a book you have never read before. So don't worry about it. Just underline whatever you feel is important, but just keep this in mind that you have to uh, make short notes. You have to make very concise notes. You have to be very conservative about including things in your notes until and unless you find them very important. So once I read this chapter, right, so I've underlined whatever I felt. I've read, this is my first reading. Then comes the second chapter. I have read, I've underlined, and for the third chapter as well. Now when I read it for the second time, I go very slow. I give every line a very careful reading. I understand what they're try to understand what they're talking about, and then I also stop and take a momentarily pause on the things that I have underlined in my first reading. For example, I come to this page. So I have underlined at Kanpur the natural choice was Nana Sahib. Begum Hazrat Mahal took over the reins of Lucknow. Her son Bidris Qadir proclaimed Nawab and resumed regular administration. At Bareilly, Khan Bahadur, right? At Bihar, Kunwar Singh. So basically, what is this? These are the leaders of this rebellion at various places. So now what I will do is, now that I am starting to make notes, right? So I will make notes. I will revolt of 1857. The first thing which I see is that this chapter talks about is various leaders of this revolt, right? So I will now see how I make notes. I will give this a subheading leaders, and I will start writing Kanpur, Nana Sahib. Lucknow, Begum Hazrat Mahal and her son Bidris Qadir. Then Bareilly, Khan Bahadur. After that, Bihar, Kunwar Singh. See, don't go on the handwriting in anything. These are your own notes. You will be able to understand your own handwriting. I have written leaders because this was the first thing that this chapter was talking about. So I have written that. But you should always remember that there is a scope that things might get added to this topic. So just that's why I follow this flowchart method, because if anything has to be added, I can add like this. I can add like this, right? I can add like this. I will not have to, write the same thing about the same subheading somewhere else, because it will be very difficult for me when I revise. I want everything related to one topic at one place. So that makes the things easier for me. So we will move ahead now. We will move ahead in the chapter. Now when I'm reading it again, right? For example, after this Bihar, there's this Rani Lakshmi Bai at Jhansi. So I will update my notes at Jhansi, Rani Lakshmi Bai. And if another leader comes up, as we go on reading the chapter, another place, we will add it here, we will add it here. And if not, then we'll leave this place. We'll just cancel this thing out and we'll let it be. Right? Now I move ahead. As I move ahead, I come across this thing. The revolt was not confined to these major centers. It has embraced almost every cantonment in Bengal, in Bombay, in Madras. Only in Madras, army remained totally loyal. So this looks to be a very important point. So what we can, for example, if there is a question in your UPSC mains, what were the major centers of revolt of 1857? All these centers that you have just noted down here, you will have to write. But after that, you can also write a major point saying that though these were the major centers, but the revolt was not restricted, or was not only restricted to these places, but it has spread over every cantonment in Bengal, leaders and centers would be better, right? But only in Madras. So you can write this point over here just like this. Almost every cantonment area in Bengal, only Madras remained loyal. So you can just write it down like this. So you are also preparing your answers of GS mains as we go ahead. Now I'll continue reading this. It is certainly true that conditions of service in companies, army and cantonment increasingly came into conflict with the religious beliefs and prejudices of the sepoys, who were predominantly drawn from the upper caste Hindus. Initially, the administration sought to accommodate sepoys' demands. So when you start reading this, now you will come to understand that the chapter starts talking about the reasons of the revolt, reasons behind the revolt, reasons and causes. As I continue reading this chapter, you will understand that this chapter is now talking about reasons till it continues to talk about reasons till here, till this chapter. When you read it, you will understand. I cannot read it because the video will be very long, very long, and it won't make any positive about it. But what happens is that when you start reading it, you will get to understand a certain thing. Just this line will give you an idea. The discontent of the sepoys was not limited to military matters, as they reflected a general disenchantment with the opposition to British rule. The sepoys, in fact, was a peasant in uniform. So now, when you have written reasons as causes, you know that reasons were military and reasons were civil or non-military. Now I will start writing my military reasons. Military reasons for this. The unhappiness of sepoys first surfaced in 1854, 47th Regiment of Barakpur when they were ordered to go Burma. Now Burma, to religious Hindus, crossing the sea meant loss of caste. Crossing the sea, loss of caste. Example, 1824, Burma. Now I'll come to my second point. This is the religious sensibilities of the sepoys who participated in the Afghan war was more seriously affected. During the arduous, disastrous campaign, the fleeing sepoys were forced to eat and drink whatever came their way. Right? So, you can give another example. Example, Burma, Afghan war. Then we will continue, that is promote conversions. Second reason in military matters. Promote conversions. See, all of them, I will tell you something when we finish this. Promote conversion, allowing missionaries to preach freely. Then we come to sepoys' discontent was not religion alone, unhappy with their emoluments. Insufficient emoluments. These two here are religious causes. Religious causes, right? Discrimination. Nation as against the Indian sepoys. Promotion matters and other privileges. Now this is civil and non-military reasons. They start from here. New land revenue system introduced after annexation and confiscation of lands attached to charitable institution affected his well-being. We're talking about almost every agricultural family in Oudh had a representative in army. Agriculture. ancestral families affected by new land revenue system. So this entire thing talks about that only, right? Then we come to next page, and this. The reason of this mass has to be sought in nature of British rule, which affected interests of almost every section of society. Peasantry became progressively indebted and impoverished. Only interest of company was realization of maximum revenue. Inexorbitant revenue collection. Then traditional landed aristocracy suffered no less. Estates were confiscated. Right. Then misery to artisans and handicraftsmen. The annexation of Indian states company cut off their major source of patronage. So in the notes that we have just made, we have seen that we were not just able to, make notes very concise manner, but we were also, able to give dimensions to our notes, like reasons and causes were divided into military, civil. They were further divided into religious and non-religious. Then civil and military causes were also written over here. Now we will continue this chapter, reading this chapter. Then we will come to another major thing, which once you will read this chapter, you will realize that the next part of this chapter talks about the reasons why this revolt failed. That I will write here. Reasons of failure. See, these first reason is here. The merchants, intelligentsia, Indian rulers not only kept aloof but actively supported the British. No support. No support from intelligentsia, merchants, and rulers. And come to, we'll continue reading it. Then there is this. Bahadur Shah and Zinat Mahal had no faith in sepoys and negotiated with the British to secure their safety. Most of the talukdars tried only to protect their own interest. Most of them, like Man Singh, changed sides several times. No faith shown by Bahadur Shah, changing loyalties of talukdars. Example, Man Singh. Continue. Apart from commonly shared hatred for alien rule, the rebels had no political perspective or different vision of future. Lack of future vision. Continue. Once you continue reading, it is nothing. Then what will say? There was not yet to be, yet rebels showed exemplary courage, dedication, commitment. Thousands of men quoted dead, fighting for the cause, heroism alone. Then this talks about how British were able to crush this rebellion. So major reason for failure would be strong strong military action by the British. One more thing that you will realize is, once you read this chapter, is lack of coordination among sepoys and rebels. Many more reasons you will figure out once you read. You can always add it here, add in your notes, right? See, this is a very small notebook I have right now. When I was preparing I used a bigger notebook which had A4 size papers. So I was able to finish this chapter pretty cleanly in that A4 size, one page only. So this chapter of around, this is 30, starts from 31 and 40. It's around 10 pages, this first chapter, and I was able to finish in a single page much more cleanly, because this is a very short small notebook, only to show you guys much cleanly on one sheet of paper I was able to finish it. So this is how my notes when I prepared they look like. If I would write revolt of 1857, this is how it looks like. Centers and leaders, here I have written about them, centers and leaders. Then reasons and causes, military, civil, religious, non-religious. Flow of the revolt, whatever points were there, right? Then reasons of failure, this I have written over here. In this one page itself, I was able, because it's the bigger page in A4 sheet, the register it had, I was able to finish this one chapter in this one page only. Then I moved on to my second chapter. Also, this flowchart, the beautiful thing about making notes like this is that you can add points whenever you wish in any topic if you read. For example, there is a news in current affairs, it is there that there was some anniversary of some revolt at some place, or there was some special what do you call it, special thing, it could be a prize, it could be a recognition, special recognition was announced for some leader of revolt of 1857. Then in this chapter, in this notes, center and leaders, for example, you have written Rani Lakshmi Bai, Jhansi, you have written this, and some news comes out that Indian government had decided to commemorate the birth date of Rani Lakshmi Bai as a particular event. You can just write it here, birthday to be celebrated as blah blah blah, and it goes. So you are updating your notes as you go with current affairs as you read. It's not necessary that you restrict to only one page. You can use, because in the end it is about quality of the notes also. It's not that zabardasti you are trying, forcefully you are trying to make them short to fit on one page, one single page. It's not like that. You can use more than one pages, you can use 2-3 pages also, but remember that mostly a chapter of 10 pages can easily be made into notes in a single A4 sheet, on a single side, at max 2 sides, not more than that. So once you are over with these 3 chapters, which are you start from 31, and these first 3 chapters are around 31 60, around 30 pages, you will be able to finish them in 3 pages, 3 A4 sheets. Similarly, if we use the same logic and we see that this book has somewhere around 530 something like that pages, and not all chapters are important for you. You will realize it once you've read it. Some chapters are more important and will have more notes, you will require to write more important things, because they have much more important data and much more important topics which cannot be left. So overall it averages. So that is how you have to go about making notes. That's how precise and concise you have to be in your note making.